Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to the last Wonky Wednesday of 2024. I know there are 2 more Wednesdays in 2024, but those will be something else. There's a little video that I made that went up last week called Looking Forward to Next Year, which explains what's happening the rest of this year and the projects for next year. So this is officially the last one, the last actual Wonky Wednesday. So I thought we'd go back to the beginning, basically, to the log cabins. I had this journal out last week to show you the cut work. Oh, sorry, that was a big noise. Sorry about that. This journal, which is about 6 years old, with log cabins on the cover and this circle. And so I'm taking my inspiration from that. And if you've been here from the beginning, you'll already know this. If you're new here, if you've joined, somewhere in the year, then it maybe is new to you if you haven't been back and watched from the beginning. But I just thought it was appropriate. So I've already made 3 little blocks. I'm now going to make a 4th one. So what you will need are some background squares. Mine are tiny, because I'm going to put this in my wonky journal. They're 3 inches, but I just tore them, whatever size, but 4 the same if you want to make 4. And then you need a little red. I'm using a red square for the centre in a log cabin that represents the hearth, so it's traditionally red. Excuse me. And then you need some strips, and I'm going with light and dark. So I've been in my scraps of natural eco-printy type cloths, and I've got strips of all different widths, from sort of 1/2 inch up to 1 inch, and I've got some darks and some lights. And then I've got just some machine cotton that I'm using up for piecing, a piecing cotton, a needle, and I've also got a little brass curtain ring for the centre. If you didn't have a ring of some kind to stitch on, you could easily do a button, or you could maybe just do stitching. And the final thing is I've got some more little scraps of my background cloth, which I must emphasise is really thin and nice to stitch through, so that I can make little strips for joining on the back. So I will need 2 strips that are the length of one of my squares by 1 inch wide, and then another strip that's the length of 2 of my squares, also 1 inch wide. So yeah, I've just got those standing by. So first of all, let's do one little square. I've got my lamp differently, I keep butting my head on it. I'll try not to make you wobble. So I've got my little squares about 1 inch from a red. I like to put them off centre. It just gives it's a curved effect, but if you want to put it completely in the centre, you go for it. And I've just got some cotton in my needle, some normal sewing thread, and I'm going to start by stitching down my centre square. And this might be a long video because last week was only a short video, but yeah, I thought we'll just have a nice, relaxing, casual little leaving do for Wonky Wednesday. I hope if you've watched the video about what's happening next year that you're excited about the projects and that you're looking forward to it. So Wednesday will still be stitching next year, and it'll still be wonky. So it'll still be Wonky Wednesday, but just a different, slightly different take on it. So I'm just doing running stitches, doesn't really matter how they are, and I'm going about 1/8 of an inch from the edge because these stitches will be covered by the next lot of stitching. And I'm just stitching all around the edge of that little square just to hold it in place. Because I'm going to lay them on raw edge, I'm not piecing, I'm not going to stitch seams and flip. If you want to do that, of course you can, but I like the fluffy edges. So once I get back to where I started, and I started, by the way, because I've stitched off I've placed my square off centre, I started, so here's the 2 small sides and here's the 2 long, get in frame Catherine, here's the 2 short sides, small sides, and here's the 2 long sides. So I started in this corner between the short side and the long side, so now I can stitch my 2 long sides first. I always like, if I've left a bigger area, I like to stitch those first because they'll take longer to fill in, if that makes sense. if you started stitching in the wrong place, you can just stop and start or jump across. So my bigger area is going to be my lights, because that's going to form the middle of my block to do my circly stitching later. So I've got here my basket of scraps. I'll just keep it to one side because it's a bit big. Let's just have some of this fluffy stuff. And you can trim it to size before if you want to. I just lay it on and stitch it and then trim it. Now I want to overlap my red square by maybe slightly less than 1/4 of an inch. We're wonky, it doesn't matter. You just want to hide those stitches that you just made. So I just lay it on, match that edge, come up behind it. Oops, come on. And I'm going to stitch along this edge. And then I'm going to stitch it down here, because then again that will be covered by the next strip and so on. If I stitched it down here, those stitches wouldn't be covered. That's a different look. If you like that, then you know, you could do that. I just prefer to stitch them all on with stitches that will be hidden, and then look later at the whole thing and decide then where I want my fancy stitching to be. So that took no time at all, 2 stitches. Now I'll trim that level with the other side of my square, turn it, and this is long enough so I might as well use it again. Could just as easily have chosen a different bit of light. Make sure I'm covering my stitches on the red there, and stitch on up. So I'm stitching up, always up to the outside edge of my strip, and then along the outside edge. This thread's very twisty because it's machine cotton. And knotty. Oh, there we go. So that's it, and you know, so I'll do 2 lights, 2 darks, and I'll just keep going until I reach the outside edge of my little patch. Stitching and trimming as I go. And I've been stitching log cabins for I don't know how many years, in all different. I've started off doing them, you know, by hand, and then I went to doing them by machine and all precise and, you know, rotary cut and all that. And now I've gone back to stitching them by hand and doing them wonky and raw edge, and I never get bored with them. I've got this is some eco-dyed wool, but it's quite wide. I want to put lots of, on these I got, in my little 3-inch square, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I got 6 rounds of the light and 1, 2, 3 rounds of the dark. I'll talk as I get there about why these outer strips are a bit wider. So I want to cram a lot of texture. Do you see how textural that is with all the little edges? A lot of texture into my one little block. So that's why I don't want my strips that wide. I'm going to cut a bit off of that. So it's going to end up about maybe 3/4, half 3/4 of an inch. Doesn't matter. If you make bigger ones, you can have bigger strips. There's no rules here really, once you've got the lights and darks and the background square. And even then, if you don't want to do lights and darks, you could do 2 different colours, or, you know, whatever. You could, if you had cloth with a little pattern on, you could put a little motif in the middle. You had butterflies printed on some cloth or whatever, you know, or little stars, or, you know, you get the idea. I just like that little pop of red in the middle. And I'm not worrying about any of these edges, because they'll all be stitched later when I do the slow stitching. And if they pop up too much and they need attention, then I shall use the slow stitching to now you see that I've left quite a lot showing. I'm going to come in a bit further with this, which makes my centre square a rectangle, but I'd rather that than have too much red showing. I don't mind if my centre squares are rectangles. I don't mind if they're all different sizes. In fact, I think it adds to it. But if you want them to all be the same size, then, you know, make sure they are. Make sure you overlap equally. Whoops. Or don't get knots. I'm using this up because there's only a little bit left on that reel, but I'll be glad when it's gone. Because it's nice for machine sewing, but it's not very nice for hand sewing. So I've got one round of lights and one round of darks, and I'm back to my lights, so I turn it again. It's just something in that rhythm for me of turning and stitching and trimming and turning and stitching and trimming. I just love that rhythm. Have a bit of this next. And it uses up all those little strips. Well, it doesn't use them all up because I've still got millions. But you know, all the little strips that are, when you trim things, bigger things down, and I just seem to end up with lots of little strips. Now there, I left about 1/4 of an inch of the previous strip showing, but you can vary that. I'm just wanting to cram a lot in, like I said. So yeah, Wonky Wednesdays have been lovely. I've enjoyed them very much. They've had a different feel to the Monday project. They've been an opportunity to explore all kinds of things. But yeah, I had plans for next year, and there wasn't room for everything, and also, like I said, the Wonky Wednesday will be incorporated into the story cloth, so, and the stitching will be on Wednesday. So if you still want to call it Wonky Wednesday, then that's fine, isn't it? It's Wednesday and it's wonky. It's been quite some planning to, well, to decide what I was going to do and then to fit it all in. And I'm happy with it, and I hope you are too. Right, I'm going to end off with this bit of thread because it's getting short, and get a new bit. Trim that off. Maybe I can use this up today. Maybe I should get a slightly shorter length because it's twisty. Okay, do you see I'm no longer parallel to the edges, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because this way of stitching onto a foundation square, if you've been here all year, you'll have heard me say this before, just means that you can do what you like within it, as long as you stop when you get to the edge and cover it all. It's going to be the size you want. Which way up do I want this bit of eco print? That way. So again, I'm going to cover quite a lot of that previous round of dark. I am going to stitch up the sides, it just kind of holds it down better. You know, even though I'm starting a new thread, I could have gone and started up there, but I just think it is worth taking a couple of little stitches up the sides. And if you use a neutral piecing thread, mine's quite white against this darks, but if you use a beige or a grey or something, if these little stitches now end up showing, then they're not going to show, if you know what I mean. If they end up showing, they won't show. If they end up being, you know, not hidden, they'll just blend right in when you do all your fancy stitching over the top. Trim that. And I do believe the first rice bags I made were log cabins. I don't have any left. I've either given them all away or sold them all. Maybe I need a new log cabin rice bag. Maybe I won't put this in my journal. Maybe I'll make 3 more panels and turn it into a rice bag. Because they do play well in a rice bag because of the, you know, the light and dark. You can continue the pattern around the corners, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously you can lay log cabins out all different ways. Whoops. I'm going for the classic sunshine and shadow, or shadow and sunshine, depending on whether you put the darks around. Oh, this thread's so awful. If it carries on playing me up, I shall change it for another one. Trim. Just be careful when you're trimming, make sure your piecing thread's well out of the way. It's so easy to just snip it off. I do it all the time if I'm not paying attention. Another bit of light. Oh, come on, Catherine, just choose a bit. A bit of this. A little bit of silk oil printed with eucalyptus, but I'll get this bit that hasn't got the orange on it. There we go. I can hear an approaching Fred. I think he seems to turn up more in the Wonky Wednesdays than he does in the Mondays. I wonder why that is. Well, he's gone and sat on the kitchen table. I'm at my desk in the living room. They just feel so wonderful, these little squares with all these little strips in them. They've just got so much texture and dimension to them. I'm going to have to get something different to go around the next side, but I like that. Variety is the spice of life, they say, don't they? Well, it's certainly the spice of log cabins. Can I tear this? Actually, I won't. I'll just cut it out the middle because then I have a fluffy edge each side. And I can hide the cut edge underneath. That's lovely and fluffy. Which way are you twisting? And twist you the other way. This is really coarse old sheet here that's been, not sure what it's been in. It looks like pomegranate actually. It might be just very weak pomegranate skins. But although it's thick and a coarse weave, it's just so lovely and soft and old. And nice to stitch there. Still is snoring. We had a little walk this morning just here locally. It's a bit of a grey day today. Now dark. A dark. Well, the other thing you can do, if you've got really thin cloth, like I've got this bit of silk that's been eco-printed. I've cut it wider or torn it wider because it's very sheer, so if I just stitch it on like that you'll see through it, which, you know, it's fine if that's what you want. Otherwise you can just fold it in half along its length, so now it is the right width, and then lay it on, and I'm going to have the cut edges down. You could equally have the folded edges down for a different effect, but I like not the cut edges, the torn edge. Now you see here I'm getting close to the edge of my background cloth. I'm showing you something you need to look up if you've looked down. So I want to get to just to the edge of my backing cloth. I want to leave a bit of this showing. That just happens to be the right size. If it wasn't, if it was too big, I could obviously just trim it. So I'm going to put it on so it just reaches the outside edge. And now this strip, what's showing, is wider. So when I come to join it to the other ones, I'm going to cover half of it with a joining strip. So that's why you don't want a really skinny strip on the outside edge. I'm going to put a pin because of the fold and everything. Yeah, you don't want a really skinny strip on the outside edge because you'll cover it up with your joining. Well, you can put a skinny strip, but it will get covered with your joining strip. So just exactly the same, even though I'm on the edge now. I'm going to just do a little line of running stitches, and I'm right on the edge of my backing cloth. Again, these stitches will be covered when we come to join it, so it doesn't really matter if they're bigger or smaller or whatever. Yeah, I thought long and hard about what to do this week because I've still got a whole list of things which, you know, won't go to waste. They might turn up in the story cloth next year. But it just seemed appropriate for the last one, and that title, the last one, if you watch Friends, then that will mean something to you. You know, if you watch the series Friends, which I didn't watch for years. I only watched it maybe a year or two ago for the first time, and only because my children insisted, because I just didn't think it would be, you know, something I'd enjoy. But I did, and I've now watched it a couple of times, I think. But yeah, the episodes have all got, you know, the one where this, that and the other happens. That's what the episodes are called, like that, aren't they? If you watch it. And the last episode is called The Last One. So it's a little bit, you know, when you come up to the end of the year, or at the end of a year, it's a date on the calendar, isn't it? But it does make you think about what's gone and what's to come. The month of January is named after the Roman god Janus, who had a face going forwards and a face looking backwards. And that's a little bit what January does to me, at least. Makes me think of the future and the past at the same time. I must say I will be glad to get into next year, although again it's just a date on a calendar. I've had quite enough of this year. I mean, no, that's not fair to say, because this year has been an absolutely wonderful year in terms of doing this, meeting all of you, doing YouTube, which is never something I thought I would ever do in my life. You know, and all that, that's not, I won't be, and that will carry on, so I won't be saying goodbye to that, because that'll carry on. I'll be saying, you know, I'll be glad on a personal level to get this year behind me. Although of course I know that you can't just draw a line and move on quite so easily, but I expect you know what I'm burbling on about. I expect you know what I mean. So now you see I've filled in the dark area, and I've started another round of lights, which gives me already one extra round of lights, but I'm going to have to go around again with lights. But that's fine. That just, you know, that's just how it is when you go off centre. This bit's got quite a strong rust print on it. If I use it that way around and that way up, and most of that, I don't really want much of that rust print or any of it showing. I'll trim it afterwards. Actually, I'm going to make that strip smaller because it's still a bit wide. Put it back into shape because I tore it all funny. So when I get to the end of this little strip of light, I'm going to have to end off and go back and start over there somewhere. I just love making these. Did I say that already? I think it's safe to say there'll definitely be some log cabins somewhere in the story cloth or the comfort cloth. I still haven't really fixed on a name. Sometimes in my head I call it the story cloth, sometimes I call it the comfort cloth. I'm going to have to come up with a definitive name before the first video. Right, so I just did a little back stitch. That's quite a big bit of thread left, but I'm going to get a new bit anyway. So I just trim that more or less level with the edge, and now I'm going to go back here and put some more light. What shall we have? That's a bit small, so I need a strip that's sort of wide enough, really. Some of this. So this is super wide, so I can sort of judge how wide I want it just by laying it on. I want some of the previous ones showing, and I want it to reach the edge, which is about there. There we go. It's very fragile, it's torn all funny, but I don't mind. I'll just trim those hairy bits off, they're a bit too much. So that'll go there, that'll go there, pig. Excuse me. Come on, Catherine, sort yourself out. Sorry, I don't seem to be very chatty today. I thought I'd do a nice long chatty video, and I'm not very chatty. What can I tell you about? Tell me. You chat and I'll listen. Oh yeah, that did remind me that I know I did talk about doing a live, not for Wonky Wednesday, but for the Monday project. It won't work because my children will be here, so for Christmas. So I'm going to pre-record the videos for the Christmas week. So next year at some point I will sort myself out with the appropriate equipment and knowledge, and do a live of something. But yeah, it doesn't work for this year. Whoops. Now what I do need to do is, well, I haven't made a Christmas. I was going to make a Christmas cake, and I was going to follow Marion's recipe, Marion on Marion's World. For years I've made a Christmas cake. Well, I haven't made one for quite a few years. But when I used to make one, I used to use an old Delia Smith recipe. I think it was called the Creole Christmas cake. And you didn't have to feed the cake if you don't have Christmas cakes where you are. It's basically a rich fruit cake, and my granny always used to make it just after bonfire night, which is November the 6th. That was her routine. Bonfire night out of the way. November the 5th, did I say the 6th? Yeah, she'd make it on November the 6th. Make the Christmas cake, and then she would every, I don't know how often, every week or something, poke it with a knitting needle and pour brandy into it until it was a sodden mass of fruit. And yeah, and we were given it even as children. But that requires, you know, making it in advance. We call it feeding it over in this country where we do that. You'll have to tell me if in other countries you have that kind of cake at Christmas, and if you feed it in that way. But Delia Smith had this recipe where, with this cake, you didn't have to feed, because it was, you soaked the fruit for a week in the fridge. I'm going to just stitch this on, although it's too big, and then trim it back afterwards along the edge there. So you mixed all the fruit in a pan and you warmed it gently, and you put in various kinds of, you know, brandy and port and sherry and I don't know what else. And then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot through to the back and stitch it from the other side, and then I can see where the edge of my cloth is. I'm going to put a little pin, and I can see where the edge of my backing cloth finishes. Yeah, so you warmed it all up, and then the fruit, and then you let it cool, and you put it in a Tupperware in the fridge for a week, and then you give it a shake every now and then when you open the fridge. And then after the week you made the cake mixture, you know, with your flour and your sugar and your eggs and all that, and then you mixed in your boozy fruit, and then you baked it, and it was ready to eat, you know. It was ready to go. And that was the recipe I used for years. And Marion just did a recipe a little while ago, which also didn't require feeding, but it was a different recipe, and it didn't even require the week of the fruit in the fridge and all that. And that was what I was planning to do. Anyway, I was discussing this with my children who are coming for Christmas, that I hadn't made a Christmas cake for years, and I was going to make one, and so forth. And they said they didn't like Christmas cake. And I did kind of know that, but the last time I made it was certainly before I went to France, so it was more than 7 years ago, because Christmas was not really a big thing. I won't go into why or whatever. But anyway, but now this year I want to make Christmas a big thing, or, you know, a bigger thing, for myself and the children. And sorry. So anyway, so they said, we don't really like Christmas cake, Mummy. So I thought, well, if I make a great big Christmas cake, I'll eat it all myself, and that's probably not good for me. So a very long, rambly story short, I'm not going to make a Christmas cake. I might buy myself a small one if I see a nice one somewhere locally. But to make a great big huge one, which Marion's recipe is, you know, would feed an army, I could make a small one, I suppose. Anyway, I don't think I'm going to. I'm now going to trim my strip off level with my backing cloth. I am, however, going to make mince pies because everybody likes those. And I have actually already bought a Christmas pudding, a nice one. I could have made one, I suppose, but I don't have... what don't I have? I don't have a pudding bowl or all the other stuff, so I thought, well, I've always bought Christmas pudding, so I just bought one, which is also a fruit, you know, rich fruit pudding, if you don't know. Right, so that's my fourth block, but I'm going to make mince pies, but I don't know how, because I realised yesterday, when I was looking at my kitchen, that I don't have a big area of work surface. You know, there's the little corner, and it's joined with a ridgy thing to roll my pastry out on. There's a kitchen table, but... obviously I'd take the quilt off, but it's got grooves in it, and so it wouldn't be easy to clean. And anyway, I've had an idea, and I might well share that with you when I make my mince pies. I might share with you making the mince pies. I might do that. Making my own pastry and everything. Okay, back to the log cabins. So now I've got my 4. So I've got these 2 joined already. A clock's chiming. It's chiming not the right time. It's going on and on. Excuse me one moment. Oh no, it's okay. It's chiming 12. I thought it was the afternoon already. Well, it now is. But anyway, I thought, why is the clock chiming? I was expecting it to chime 2 or 3. Yeah, so I've got these 2 joined. So now I'm going to join these 2 the right way. So I'm doing this configuration. Let's get it a bit more towards me. I think I've overcorrected. I kept coming this way out of shot, so I've moved the camera and now I'm going that way out of shot. So I'm doing this configuration with the darks in the corners and the light in the middle, which was what I did on my journal. You could equally, of course, do you know, some other configuration. You could do it like that, so it makes like a cross. I can't really show you other ways because I've stitched these 2 together, but you could put, instead of putting the lights in the middle, you could put the darks in the middle as well. You know, so it would be sort of like that, and then you have to imagine that one's there, but I'm going for lights in the middle. Light at the centre seems kind of symbolic in some way. So I need to join this one to this one here. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some of my backing cloth, and I've got this little strip already which is the same length as my squares and about 1 inch wide, and I'm going to pick this up and I need to stitch it to this edge but on the back. So I pick it up and straight away put it where it goes, match the edges, get my thread, and I'm going to stitch somewhere around a 1/4 inch seam. And if I go all the way through, it doesn't really matter because it will be covered by the strip I'm going to put on the other side. But in an ideal world you wouldn't go all the way through, you'd just go through into the backing. But yeah, don't stress about it, it doesn't really matter. And because this is a seam that is kind of holding something, I'm going to do slightly smaller, neater stitches. And this is my preferred way of joining, because if you put these bulky little blocks right sides together and stitch a seam, then you've got at least 4 layers of cloth in your seam, and they can be, you know, a little bit bulky. So this is how I like to do it. I did show at the beginning of the year, I think, various different ways of joining. And this method can be applied to any size and any kind of block, not only log cabins. So once I've got to the other end, I shall do a couple of little back stitches. And cut my thread. And make a knot. Ready, and then I can flip that up and finger press. Another way of joining is to have your background square bigger and leave some of the edge not uncovered, and then use those to join. That's another way. Probably get into that next year in the slow cloth, story cloth / whatever we're calling it project. Anyway, so now I need to join this to this. So now I pick it up and I want to put the joining strip against the back of the other square. Do you see? I'll put a pin in and just show you, maybe a couple of pins, just so it's clear what you're sewing to what. So when I've stitched that, you see, and flip it up, because I did a 1/4 inch seam and a 1/4 inch seam, which makes 1/2 inch, and my strip was 1 inch wide, which leaves 1/2 inch, those 2 seams I just made sit together over that joining strip. And then we're going to do something on the front to strengthen the front. And then on the back, all you see is this little strip. There's no raw edges. You could equally just slap a strip down, stitch it on raw edge. It would depend what you were going to use it for. If you were going to then back it to make a rice bag, a lining or something, you could say it's not even necessary to do this joining strip on the back at all because it's going to be hidden. But, you know, let's do it like this for now. So that's where I'm stitching. I hope that's clear where I'm stitching. Do you see? So I've got this little gully, that's where I stitched the first line. Now I'm going to stitch this line. Pins out. So this is where you need to be a tiny bit accurate with your seam allowance, but basically all you need to do now is where I'm stitching this line, I've got that hanging down there. This stitching line needs to be halfway this piece that's showing, the white here that's showing. So if I stitch the line halfway along there, if you want to draw a line to guide yourself, you know, go for it. If I stitch halfway along there, there'll be enough cloth here to cover this seam. So you just want to stitch halfway along what you can see of your backing strip. You know, if you're worried that you haven't measured accurately or haven't measured at all in my case. If you just stitch halfway along somewhere, and it's cloth, it stretches, and you know, you can ease it into place, you can always stitch things over. That's what I just love about this way of stitching. There's no pressure to make anything match. There's nearly nothing you can't sort out either by putting some more stitches in or by stitching another bit of something over, and you just make it more beautiful, more layered, more story by doing that. So I've come to the end, back stitch and snip, and then I shall open that out and show you when I got my knot in. Right, so now with a bit of encouragement that will lay flat. Do you see? And those two edges butt up, and then on the other side it's all joined and covered by that little strip. So now I need to put, I'm going to put something here on the front side just to bridge, because it's like go like this now. You could just do some biggish stitches or cross stitches or something. You don't have to put another piece of cloth if you don't want to, but I put another piece of cloth here, so I'm going to repeat that here. So I'm in my lights, so I need a light piece, unless again you could make a feature and put dark cloth and make like a window frame effect. You can just play. So I just want a piece that's big enough that I can stitch it to both sides, wide enough I mean, and long enough. Let's have some of this. So there's a bit of cotton flannel. It's very frayy, but it's very soft and fluffy. I'm going to make it even fluffier. I'm just going to lay that so it's more or less halfway each side. Trim it to the right length. And you could just straight away do invisible base if you didn't want the stitching to show. But I'm just going to, this blends quite well because it's a light coloured cloth. I might put a couple of pins actually. Lay flat, slap it on. There's my applique pins. Stella's really snoring. We didn't have a very long walk, we just went in the little local woods. Like I say, it's quite a grey day. It's raining a bit now and then, but she had some doggy friends there. There's a little gang of, I think the lady's a dog walker, you know, someone who walks dogs for maybe people who are out at work or whatever. And she's always got a little gang of dogs, pack of dogs. Pack of dogs sounds a bit, you know. They're all friendly little dogs, and the first time Stella saw them coming, well, she saw one or two of them, so they were round a corner, and she went sort of, you know, with her tail up to say hello, and then the rest of them appeared, and she was a bit intimidated and came running back to my side. But now she knows they're not always the same dogs. There's a couple that are always there, but Now she knows they're friendly and she goes and has a good old run with them. But that's nice there, you know, if you just want to go for a little local walk. It's not very big, the little woods. There's some woods and a little green area. But there's nearly always other dogs there for her to play with, or I can take the tennis ball and throw that for her. And so she gets a good run. And I can have a chat with people. It's very sociable. Ooh, how did I go through there? So when I get to the end here, I'm just going to turn, whoops, and stitch across to the other side, and then turn back and just stitch down the other side. And this stitching is going, again, probably not right through. Well, I've come right through here and there, but it's white on white, I don't really mind. But, you know, if you want to be more careful, and you know me by now, I don't mind my stitching showing on the back, mostly. But just making sure that this stitching line went into this block and this stitching line is going into this block, because this little strip of cloth is the bridge between the two. And then when that's done and it's been bridged on both sides, it's really quite sturdy. Like I say, I've made rice bags of these and they hold up. And my Wonky journal cover, which is not here, which I will need to get in a minute, or in a bit, to put it in. Oh no, I'm not putting it in, am I? I'm doing a rice bag. Apparently I'm doing a rice bag. My Wonky journal cover was done in the same way. Right, I'll just do a little back stitch and snip that. So there we go. So now you see how that's reasonably, you know, as sturdy as a little scrap of cloth's ever going to be. But it's not pulling apart in the middle, and it's not pulling, you know, it's quite sturdy. So now I'm going to join that to that in exactly the same way. So now I need a longer strip. That's long enough. I'm going to tear it just by eye to 1 inch wide. Get the strings off. And stitch it to the back. I'm just going to trim it to size first. You could equally do it afterwards. Oh, I need another bit of thread. That's good. That's using up my thread. It was too. I would have kept it for the odd bit of machine sewing I do occasionally do, but it was too, you know. If I do any machine sewing these days, usually it's something big, and that would just run out somewhere and be annoying. So that's why I thought I'd just use it up for piecing. I might put some pins in this because it's quite long. Oops. Yeah, I'm just going to put a few pins, do the same thing as before, a 1/4 inch seam down this side, and then put it together with the back of the other piece, making sure, checking about 3 times probably that I've got that the right way around, and stitch it to that. I am going to, when I got this last pin in, just going to pause for a minute and make myself a cup of tea, I think. So obviously you don't, you know, there won't be a pause for you, but if you want to pause and go and make a cup of tea, this might be a good time. And also put a cardi on, because when I came back from my walk I was warm. You know that thing when you've been outside and you come in and it's been cold outside and you come in and it's warm. So I took off loads of layers and now I'm bare-armed and getting a bit goosebumpy. So I'm going to pause, put a jumper on, make a cup of tea and come back. I'm back with my cup of tea. Okay, so I'm just going to have a sip of my cup of tea. Oh, sorry, I slurped a bit. And get this stitched on. So again, just a 1/4 inch-ish. Do a back stitch to start because it's kind of structural. And away we go. Again, not aiming to go all the way through, not minding if I do, but kind of, you know, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, so Fred was on the kitchen table when I went in to make tea, and then he went. I thought he'd gone out, but he hasn't. He's gone on my bed. So I don't, well, who knows? Who knows how long this video is going to be? Who knows how long Fred's going to sleep for? He is a law unto himself. I don't know if he's going to show up or not. It's actually amazing to think how quickly they've both settled and how quickly I've settled as well. So I moved in on September the 8th. So it's not quite, sorry about that, not quite 4 months. You know, that feeling when, with time, that either it seems like it was only a brief amount of time, but at the same time it seems like it was a long time. Do you know that feeling? It was just a little bit thick there because of the seams of this other strip, but I'm through there now. And that's why I said at the beginning, you really want thin, soft cloth for your backing cloths. Always, I always like to use really soft old sheets, because they're just there as a little stabilising surface for everything else, but you don't want thick or even thin sheets that are high thread count. That aren't nice to stitch, because it's so important that it's enjoyable to stitch. Yeah, so it's quite amazing that in such a short time, I mean, animals are generally quite adaptable, aren't they? I mean, dogs in particular, because they say dogs are bonded to the people, the pack. And obviously dogs are used to being taken places. Often they, you know, being taken out in the car or being taken on holiday or to visit friends or whatever. But cats not so much, but yeah, he's settled very well. I'm very, very pleased about that. He does have little scraps every now and then, I think, with one other cat. Little fights, and comes in with little scratches on him. But he's quite a bold cat. I don't think he goes looking for trouble, but he's not afraid if trouble finds him to stand up for himself. Right, so now I'm going to flip that up and just press it with my thumbnails. And then I'm going to stitch it to, I'll put it how it goes to make sure I'm the right way round, and then I'm going to stitch it to that. So I get it like that and flip it so it's backing to backing. And again, because it's slightly longer, I'm going to put some pins in it. Now I'm not bothering here about matching anything in the middle. I'm just making sure that, you know, they match roughly end to end. Because it's so scrappy, there's so much going on, it just really doesn't matter. It's not like you know, a 4-patch or something where you see a clean junction in the middle and then maybe you want to pay a bit more attention. It's very wonky. So again, I'm just going to put a line of stitching somewhere halfway along what I can see of that backing strip. So it's going to be interesting, Christmas, fitting everybody in. There'll be my son and my daughter and my daughter's boyfriend. And he's French, so he has been to England before, or Britain before. I think he's been to England. I know he's been to Scotland because he went to Scotland with his family in the summer. But I don't know what kind of Christmas he's used to, because it's a little bit different in France in my experience. It's more, Christmas Eve in France is more the day when they have the biggest celebration. Well, the French people I knew, it probably varies between families. Whereas for us it's Christmas Day the 25th. So yeah, he's a very easygoing kind of chap. I'm sure he'll be fine, but got some things planned to do. Go to the beach. You know, apart from the usual Christmas eating and presents and all that kind of thing. Go and do some Christmas shopping. They're coming a couple of days before Christmas, so go. I don't know where we're going to go yet. Go somewhere nice. Quite a few options around here. Have some nice walks. Lily, my daughter will Mrs. Stella, I know. So she'll be pleased to see Stella, and Fred, of course, but she hasn't been able to be over yet. Well, she came over in August when I was still staying with my friend for a few days. And Joey, my son, came over a little bit later, but I was still staying with my friend. Joey's not actually seen this place at all. Lily came and saw the outside because I didn't have the key yet. So I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing them and having that time together. And having a nice family Christmas. Right, so that's done. Open that up, show you on the back. So on the back you've just got this cross of these two strips. Looks quite neat and sturdy. And on the front I'm going to do sorry, sip of tea. I'm going to do a bit of trimming here. And you see here, this edge is just coming up a little bit past the backing, the edge of those strips. So I'm just going to shave a bit off on both sides. And there we go, that lays nice and flat now. So now, instead of putting one strip all the way across, you could do that. I'll just show you how that would look. So you could just put one strip the whole way across. I just find that quite visually dominant. I'm going to put two strips and overlap them in the middle. Maybe not that, because that's quite thick. You could overlap them any way you wanted to, you know, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'm going to do this, but it needs to be a bit narrower. So I want it to kind of cover, like as before, a good 1/4 inch of this strip and a good 1/4 inch of this strip. So it needs to be sort of 1/2 inch plus a bit, really. Can I tear this little scrap? Yes, I can. And so I'm going to have them overlapping somewhere in the middle, probably. I'll put that one there like that first. Put some pins. Get some thread. And just do the same thing again. You could pin both strips on and stitch the whole way, but I'm going to do it like this. So I'll just hide my knot somewhere inside. And let's come straight through. Don't pull it so hard. And do a little back stitch. And away we go. So I'm just going to stitch down there, same as before, just not aiming to go all the way through. Especially just making sure I attach it to something. It just feels so nice in the hand now. All this fluffiness. I hope if you watched Park Home Life last week, you enjoyed seeing the red dress. That was so wonderful to have that opportunity to see it. If you did watch, or even if you didn't, if you go and look on the website, I put the link there below the video. But if you just Google the red dress, you'll find it. There's a whole list of places it's going. It's still travelling. I don't know if it'll find a permanent home. You would think so, you would hope so, that one day it will find a permanent home somewhere, you know, on public display. So I've got to the end of my strip. I'm just going to stitch across the end. And then turn and come back the other way. Well, it's like I said in Friday's video, it's a beautiful thing, you know, just as an object it's just stunning. And all the stitch, all the different embroidery, and you know, the different kinds of embroidery, some by quite expert embroiderers, some by, you know, women that are just, you know, just ordinary women like us. But so all different styles, all different colours, but all unified by this beautiful dress. And it all just kind of blended and went, and that's such a metaphor for community. You know, we're all different, we all have different voices, different ways of doing things. But you put it all together and somehow it works. And is beautiful. Right. I'm just going to do a back stitch on the front because why not? And trim that, and I turn to the back and trim, and then I can kind of make sure I'm somewhere level with my backing. Although you see it is a bit wonky, but you know, we don't mind wonky. I'm whispering, can you hear me still if I whisper? We don't mind wonky, do we? So now I want another strip just to close off this other side. What have I got in here? Got some of this. That's nice and thin. It's got a seam in it. It's been ripped out of something, so I'll just rip it. Get rid of that folded bit of seam. So now I'm going to just overlap there the strip I just stitched on. It's not the same width, but I don't mind. Trim it to the right length. Make sure I'm sort of half covering that gap, half on each side or thereabouts. Just bridging the gap. And I need a new bit of thread. And another sip of tea. So I hope even if you made, you know, log cabins earlier in the year, or that you're inspired to have another go. And maybe if it was your first time, you know, and you were here early in the year and you made the wonky log cabins, and but you haven't made them since, maybe do it again and look at them and see if you think, not that you've improved, because it's not about improving, but if your style has developed, shall we say, or, you know, changed or evolved in any way. I think when I make these now, they always have the same look, because I've made I don't know how many of them, possibly hundreds. And I more often than not use this sort of palette of colours. Although the one on this one on my journal, let's not clang that ruler again. This one on my journal, I'm showing you something, was the neutrals, and then the darks were indigo dyed, indigo and rust dyed. So it's much more grungy and muted, but it's a similar look really, I think. So I'm just going to do the same thing again, just stitch up and down both sides of that little strip. And then I can do some fancy stitching. I hadn't really realised that I call it fancy stitching until I read in a Facebook group comments, you know, over the year of people calling it fancy stitching in brackets, or saying I'm doing what Catherine calls fancy stitching. I didn't really think about it until other people commented on it. I don't know why I call it fancy stitching. Decorative stitching, I suppose, rather than structural stitching. So yeah, so New Year's resolutions, for or against, discuss. I don't really make New Year's resolutions anymore. It's a thing, isn't it? It's obviously a thing. That's poking out. That'll be alright. Because you kind of set yourself up for failure if you make very specific resolutions, or I do. You know, people say I'm going to go on a diet in January, or I'm going to lose 10 pounds, or, you know, whatever. And then often you don't, and so you're disappointed. So I don't do that. I don't make resolutions in that way, but kind of maybe intentions or wishes or something like that for the new year, or thoughts, or something really unchallenging. Obviously I've committed to the projects here, and that's a good way to keep myself on track, and anybody else that wants to do a project, whether it's the journaling or the stitching or whatever. Those of you who've followed the Wonky Wednesdays, or those of you who've followed the Mondays and done the whole year, there's a sense of achievement, isn't there? If you like that kind of thing, you know, we're not all the same. So yeah, so I don't really make specific New Year's resolutions like I'm going to lose 10 pounds or things like that. So I do get, you know, as many of us do, a little bit reflective, and I'm going to shoot through because there's something in there. It's probably just multi-layers. But that's okay. So yeah, so I've got a few intentions / ideas / whatever we're calling them. not resolutions. That, and they're quite, you know, nothing groundbreaking or anything like that. Before I tell you about them, I shall just show you it now how it is. So here and there there's bits poking out, there's bits that need stitching down, you know, like here and whatever, but I'm going to start in the middle. I've got my little ring that I'm going to couch on. I want some thicker thread. I didn't manage to use all that up. I've got one of my sewing pouches here with some thicker threads in. Let's have a look and see what we might... Oh, that was the Caligas man going by. Oops, not that one because it's fallen on the floor. I think I want something just neutral. Now do I want to use a pearl cotton, which is quite thick? I've got that pearl cotton I could use. Got some of this lovely silk from Jill that's quite fine, but you know, in the same colour palette, neutrally palette. And I've got this gold. I want a bit of gold? I don't know. This is what I do. I pull out everything I might want and then I edit. I do it with everything I make because I've said it before. I'm one of those people that if I have too much stuff, I'd find it overwhelming. You know, some people like to have a great big mountain of stuff to work from, don't they? Let's have some of this. And they're just grabbing things and something beautiful comes out the other end, but that's not me. If I have too much stuff, I don't know which way to turn. So these are my options that I've picked. I do like the look of that because that's just going to be texture. It's the same colour, give or take. This is slightly grayer, but that's floss, so that's adaptable. I can use 1 strand, 2 strands, 6 strands, whatever. And this silk is lovely and fine. Maybe I'll use the gold only to couch this circle down because the circle's brass. Maybe I'll start with that. Actually, no, I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to do that in a minute. First thing I'm going to do is I've got one of my, it says eggs on it, which I've been using for I don't know how long. It's more holes than template. It's just a circle cut out of a bit of paper. I'm going to put that on there somewhat centrally and do that first, I think. So what I do then is I just pin it on with a plique. You could draw around something in a blue pen or, you know, a pencil. I've always done this. I need to move that slightly that way. It's just the way I like to do it. It might not be the best way. It might not be the easiest way, but it's just the way I like to do it. And that's important. I think that's important to bear in mind for yourself when you're looking for ways to do things. Find your own way. Find the way that you like. And don't let anybody tell you it's not the right way. I hope I've never said it, and if I have, you can pull me up on it, because I don't think there really is in this realm. I mean, obviously there's a right way to do things in life generally. That can be quite dangerous if we don't do it correctly. But I'm just talking about this. Let's go with this pearl cotton. So I'm going to get my slightly bigger needle. What have I got? There's a number 8. No, it's not. It's a number 9. There's a number 8. Yeah, because it's not necessarily that, you know, people who are experts in things, and again, I'm only talking about this, say this is how you do it like this. This is how you thread a needle. There we go. I mean, I've always been, even before I started doing this, even as a child, maybe it was called stubbornness, but I don't think it was. You know, questioned ways of doing things when people say, this is how you must do it. I've always been one of those people that looks at something and thinks, well, I don't really want to do it like that. And it's not being, like I said, deliberately awkward or anything. I'm just going to running stitch around the edge of my little template here. It's just, I think, trying to find my own way of doing things that I enjoy and that gives me results that I'm happy with. But primarily with this that I enjoy doing. I'd rather, and this is just me, we're all different, I'd rather use a process that I'm happy with that maybe takes twice as long and maybe even the result is less pleasing, but I enjoy the process, than do something, you know, in a certain way that I don't enjoy that maybe yields better results, better being judged by who I don't know. So that's also why I say it's not the right way or the wrong way, it's just my way, and you know, you can try my way and see if you like it, or you can find your own way. So this is why I have this scrappy little bit of paper that I've had in one of my sewing pouches for I don't know how many years, I'm sure it's years. And I just keep using it until the last hole tears and it can't be used anymore, and then I'll make another one. And I've got all different sizes. But the little applique pins are ideal for this as well because they're only small and they don't get in the way much and they don't make huge big holes in the paper. Can't remember where I started now. Around there. So now I'm stitching on this as if it was just one piece of cloth, although it's obviously all these little bits. I'm just stitching away, not minding where the joins are. I do like though when I'm doing a circle, as I come back towards the beginning, to try and gauge my stitches so that I end up not having to do a small stitch or a big stitch at the end. So space, stitch, space, stitch, space. That's just me. So then if I find I'm not going to, I'll just adjust. I'll do a slightly smaller space so I can fit in an extra stitch or something, you know, so it doesn't all happen at once. That makes sense. Well, that's just my little quirk. It might not bother you. And for my last stitch I'm going to just go through to the back, get my little bit of paper off. Because, you know, people would look at this and they wouldn't be wrong and they'd think, for goodness sake, Catherine, that's a little scrap of old envelope that you've been carrying around with you for the last few years. Just get another envelope and draw a new one. But I'm attached to it. And it's very possible that when it's no longer any use as a template, I'll put it somewhere in a journal. I think that's my daughter's handwriting on the back, or my son's possibly. Probably a shopping list, or maybe something they wrote that they needed ingredients for cooking at school, or I don't know, but that's the kind of thing I get attached to. Right, so I've got a circle. I don't know if you can really see it because I'm using the same colour thread. It's completely off centre. Is it actually off centre, or is that just the strips giving the illusion of it being off centre? No, it's just the strips giving the illusion. So, excuse me, I'm going to have another sip of my tea. And I'm going to go round again, I think. So I'm going to go about 1/4 inch or so away from my first circle and just stitch another circle around the edge, around the outside. You can do any kind of fancy stitching you like. This is just what I'm doing. I just love doing running stitch. I find it very comforting. And I'm just, excuse me, I'm just gauging by eye the distance away, but because I'd rather do that than draw lines, but it doesn't mean it's wrong to draw lines. So that's how I do, however big I was going to go with my circle. If I was going to, you know, radiate out until it was a foot across, I would still just start with my template, stitch one circle, get template off, and then just use that circle as a reference for subsequent circles, whether I go out or in, bigger or smaller. And here and there, if I'm going through layers of overlap, if there's two thicker cloths next to each other, it might be slightly resistant. But if it's really too resistant to get your thread right through, just stitch into the top layer in that place, it doesn't matter. You don't have to go right through with every stitch. I'm just eyeballing again where my starting point was, just to make sure that I meet it. If I've widened or narrowed, I'll just gently ease myself back on track. And again, just judge. Now there, you see I've got the edge of that cloth poking out. I'm going to just poke it in with my needle. And then this next stitch I'm going to make is going to mend that in inverted commas. So I'm going to make sure that this stitch now jumps across that edge of that cloth. So that stitch is forming the circle, but at the same time it's helping anchor down that edge that was poking up. And that for me is part of the mindfulness of doing this kind of slow stitching. So you're listening to the cloth, you're seeing what's needed. And actually I'm going to do a third circle round. I might go inside now. Partly because I've still got thread in my needle, so I'll just stitch on. And partly because I like threes of things rather than twos. And I'm not worrying about my stitches that I put to hold those strips on. Like I said, you could have done the invisible baste if you wanted to. They just become part of the background texture. The smaller your circles are, the smaller you want your stitches to be, because obviously they're kind of going around a curve. So if you've been doing bigger stitches as you go in on your circle, you could make your stitches smaller. That would actually give quite a nice effect, I think, if you did a whole load of concentric stitch circles and reduced your stitch size as you went in. And my circle's slightly dishing, not well dishing on the back, coming up on the front. It's because I always pull my stitches a little bit tight. I won't say tighter than I should. It's just my habit. But I know I'm going to stitch something in the middle, so that'll flatten out. Just want that string away. So I'm going to end this off on the back. Just with back stitches. I don't do quilter's knots and all that anymore. I do know how to do them. I choose not to. So to get that out, because I like this new. Actually, now I'm going to get a bigger needle for this gold because it's silk and it's quite thick. And I'm going to stitch this on somewhere in the middle of my circle. I'm going to couch it on, basically. So couching, you know, like when you stitch over a thicker bit of a thicker thread, or you could twist a strip of cloth and couch that on, but you can also couch on hard objects like this is metal. going to get this big no, that's too big. I'm going to get this. I think that's a size 7. There you go. Because I know that this thread, from experience, I know that it's inclined to split and snag. As beautiful as it is, this silk's dyed with gall nuts. So I'm going to get a shortish length. I would run it through some wax, but I haven't got any wax here, so I'm going to run it over my tongue. It's for me, so you know. It's just a bit kinked from being wrapped around that little card. Make a knot. Now this, obviously I can't pin it in place or anything because it's metal, so I'm just going to have to hold it there. So I'm going to hold it where I think. And I'm going to come through inside it. And then just take a stitch over, staying as close to it as I can. And I'll take, when I've taken that first stitch, I'm going to just pull the stitch up and then just make sure it is in the right place. Do I need to adjust it? No, it's fine. So, and then I'm going to go round probably quite far apart to start with, maybe a 1/4 inch apart. And I'm obviously stab stitching because the ring won't bend. Chicken stitching we call it. Beck and scratch. And this will hold it in place, and then I don't have to keep my thumb on it anymore. And if I want to go back and put more stitches around, I can, or I might just decide I like the look of it just with these stitches and leave it at that. We'll see. So when I'm couching, I always go down and up on the same side rather than jumping across. So I'm coming back up on the inside. Whoops, poke something through. I don't want to do that. Poke it back in. On the inside of the ring, take my stitch straight over and shoot through on the outside of the ring. And then I'll come up on the outside of the ring and go down on the inside. And then on the back you get these little straight stitches. If you went down on one side and up on the other, like conventional couching, then you get slanty stitches. No, neither way is right or wrong. So it's just the way I do it. I just like the rhythm of it. And any found object that's a ring or a circle is treasure to me. So I'm just going to gauge now. Yeah, I can get 2 more stitches in there for my spacing. Otherwise I would have just made a little adjustment. Although the spaces there are slightly bigger, but it'll be alright. So that's my little ring stitched on. I think I have got this gold still in here, so I think I'm going to just go around once more. So I'm just going to go around in the gaps, just sort of halfway the gaps. In exactly the same way. But if you had a ring, you know, if you found a plastic ring that's not very pretty, you could just cover it completely with stitches. If you wanted to, and then you get the circular shape, but you know, you wouldn't see the plastic ring. But this brass ring is quite nice, especially against this gold, so I'm just going to do this line of this round of stitching and then leave it at that so it shows. And if I do indeed want to make a rice bag, I need to go and have a little look for 3 more, and they don't have to be 3 brass curtain rings. I don't think I've got 3 more brass curtain rings. I know I used quite a lot when I made my window blinds, because I used them to thread the, you know, the ties through when I roll the blinds up. But I could use a rusty washer. I've got some rusty washers that I've painted with matte medium, or you could, you know, just PVA would work. Just paint them with a thin coat of PVA, let them dry, and then that seals the rust in. See, the thread's getting untwisted. I have to twist it back on itself so it stays plied. You could do buttons, like I said, anything, just anything that you can stitch. And or you could do shisha, you know, if you were here for, if you've been following the Monday project and you're here for shisha week, where you don't have to be able to stitch through the object, you can stitch over it and make a little, sorry, I just kicked my sewing machine table that's under my desk. So you can have a look back at that video. I can't remember what week it is. If you look in the slow stitch playlist and scan through, I think it was week 30 something. It says shisha in the title. And you could use that shisha stitching to attach little bits of sea glass or flat pebbles, or, you know, anything like that. There we go. That'll do pig. I got this tiny bit of gold, which I could put in the aughts, but instead I think I'm going to do some seed stitches with it in the middle. It might not be enough to fill in the entire middle. We'll see. And I'm kind of looking where I'm putting my seed stitches again. If I feel I need to do any structural work, shall we say, with the you know, the junction of the strips there, then I can kind of let my seed stitches do that for me as well. Just by saying, right, I need to go over that join there, for example. This thread's really snagging now. This is what it does. It's just what it does. Twist it again. I can make my stitch jump across there because I just want to catch that edge down of that strip. Do you see what I mean? Oop. Definitely haven't got enough to fill in the whole thing. I can obviously thread a bit more if I wanted to. I've got a little reel of it there. Now we'll see where we get to. This one there. Seed stitches are very mindful as well. They're a different rhythm because of going in and out in 2 movements, rather, or the way I do it, rather than 1. But it's looking where you're going to put them and what direction they're going to go in that I find enjoyable. Right, I'm not going to risk that thread any further. I'm going to get that off and then decide I can either just get a bit more of that thread, or I could use a different thread. I think I'm going to get a bit more of this thread, just a little tiny bit. I like the idea of gold in the middle. Seagulls. I don't know if you could hear them. I've had this thread for quite a long time. It was given to me by a friend of mine, and it's beautiful, but I've still got all that left because I use it sparingly because I know how tricksy it is to stitch with. Right. Even waxed. In general, I don't run my thread through wax because I usually use embroidery floss or soft pearl cotton, and I like them fluffy. I like the fluffy texture of them, so if you run them through wax, that kind of flattens them down. Sometimes I'll run piecing thread through wax, but usually my wax is not where I'm sewing, so I don't bother, and I don't really get any, any problems. But again, it's another one of those things that you're told you're supposed to do, and if it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. If it does work for you, then go for it. Just squeeze a couple more in here, I think. Maybe one more there. And I've got too much thread, and I should put it in the aughts. Right. It will not go to waste. Okay, I've slumped in my chair. I'm so relaxed today. This video is going to be about 2 hours long, I think. So now I can do more stitching in the light areas, but these dark areas keep popping up and they're annoying me a bit. So I'm going to do a bit of stitching there. So I want something darker because I don't really want to. I want to, keep the dark and light as it is. What have I got in here? Of course I could get up and go and get a tin with loads of thread in, but I've got this here. This is some Valdani pearl cotton, variegated. It's sort of a rusty colour and a olivey colour. Oh, that needle gone. So, whoops. Oh, that's gone on the floor as well. The trouble with those little round ones, they run away. I must make sure to get those or Stella will eat them. Because it went on the floor, I cut a great big length, so I had enough. So I'm just going to, what am I going to do? I might just do some little kind of overcast stitches here and there. I'm not going to go around every edge, I don't think. Just where I think it needs to be. And that's the lovely thing about these surfaces that are raw edge, and you can look and see what needs doing rather than looking at a pristine blank surface the way you could do anything anywhere and it's up to you. If you've got a cloth that's needs things done to it, and it gives you a starting point, and you can do the things that need doing with any kind of stitch you like, and then take inspiration from the stitching you've already done to do other things. So I'm going to shoot through there. I'm not going to go all the way across. I want to stitch this edge down of flippy floppy, but I think I'm going to do that with a running stitch. So I'm going just sort of 1/8 of an inch from the edge because I don't want to hide that edge. I don't know if you can see because it's dark on dark, but I'm basically doing a running stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from this little bit of silk. And see how I always pull my stitches tight. But that's me. So that's made a decoration, it's made some fancy stitching, and at the same time it's solved a structural issue, as it were. I think I'm just going to jump down here. Again, it's that threes of things thing. And I'm going to just do, whoops, not somewhere. I'm going to just do some crosses along this edge of this wall. Just some rudimentary. I'm not going to join them up, I'm going to have gaps in between, I think. Maybe 3 crosses. And the legs are all different lengths and they're all super wonky, but I like them like that. There we go. So that little corner is now structurally sound and much prettier, I think, than it was before. And I've jumped around on the back. I probably wouldn't have done that if this outside edge was outside side was going to stay, you know, if that was going to be a cloth to be used like a coverlet, or you know, I would have stopped and started or threaded my tail through inside somewhere, because that might catch, but you know, for this it's fine. So now I'm going to do something similar on the other 3 corners, probably not exactly the same, maybe the same stitches but in a different way. So there's some sort of cohesiveness. Now that needs stitching down. Do I want to? Yeah, well, why not? Let's do some dark on the light. I'm just going to do some of those overcast stitches there, almost like a little mend. Like so. And let's do some French knots just along this edge, just here and there. Maybe in a line even. It's quite thick, so I'm just going to do 2 wraps. 1, 2. Hold the tail and pull through. Come up for the next one. 1, 2. Put my needle in, tension it against the needle and pull through. Don't know how to do a French knot. It's just another texture. I'll do 5 to have an odd number. One more. This gets me to the other side. And I think I'll just do the running stitch again, because this running stitch went this way and I'm going to do it going this way, so perpendicular. And I want to come out past the French knots now. I'm going to go in just after the French knots. That's all quite sturdy. I'll do one more stitch. And I have got 3 types of stitching because I've got that, but I just feel that there needs to be something here. So I'm going to do just some overcast stitching. Again I've jumped and made a big loop on the back, but if it's a rice bag it'll have a lining. So I'm just going to do some overcast stitching here into the red. Maybe just 3 again, or maybe 5. maybe baby, I'll go around the corner as well. Like that. End that off. So that's all fine and dandy now. You could of course go on and on stitching if you wanted to, until every little square millimetre of cloth was stitched. Now we've got this one, we've got the same thing happening here, so I might just, I mean, when I join this to make the rice bag, that's going to get stitched down anyway, so actually I won't just, I'll just leave it, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. What shall I do here now? This has got a nice sort of curved edge to it, so I might just do some running stitch. In fact, I am just going to start in this one first light coloured strip with my first stitch, just to anchor that down. And I'm just going to follow the natural curve of this bit of wool with some little running stitches, just because it's so lovely. I want to emphasise it. And now I've got to this, and I'm going to do the overcasting again. I like doing that overcasting. I like the fact that it is perpendicular to the strips. It's just a look I like. It's just a different rhythm to the stitching, you know, rather than going parallel to the strips. And the crosses as well as a different rhythm. I think I'll stop there. I've got hardly any thread left. I'm going to have to go scrabbling about on the floor. And so this one here, could do some crosses again. Maybe I'll just do tiny crosses. Not only because I haven't got much thread left, but just to be a bit different. And because I'm on a smaller scale, because I'm right in this little red square is very tiny. Although the little red square the other side was tiny. I'm doing them small just because I felt like it. There's no rhyme or reason. And probably because my thread's running out. There we go. Finish that off. Oops, sorry, made you wobble. And. I'll have to go. Excuse me while I grovel about under my desk. There it is. Oop. Sorry for the scrapey chair. I got it. And just this last corner. If you're still here and you haven't all nodded off or gone away because it's so long. But yeah, it was the last one. I thought, you know, let's just do it. As long as it takes, no editing. You can edit yourself if you want to, can't you? You can just fast forward me if you want to. So this last corner I'm going to do probably the same kind of thing. Here I've got this little bit of sheer, very sheer cloth, chiffon it was I think, and I think I'm going to just do some little seed stitches over it And again, I quite liked that look of starting in the lighter area for a stitch or two and then coming over into the dark. So I think I might do that again. I might not even stay necessarily only on the chiffon, I might stray up into the adjacent strip. Just keeping my stitches going in all directions. Just have the seeds coming sort of as if they're being scattered maybe, rather than in a block. It's funny, all the other stitches we've done through the year, you know, I mean particularly if you did the crazy patchwork with all the fancy embroidery stitches, and I still go back to basically running stitch, seed stitch, overcast stitch and the occasional French knot. But that apparently is just what I like. Maybe just one more up there. There we go. And now I've got again this lovely raggedy line of silk. I think I'm going to do that with the overcast stitch. And I'll just use that first stitch to anchor that down a bit. Maybe I'll do these quite small. But still far enough apart so that I'm not covering up all that fluffiness. The cloth that's underneath is quite thick. And it's got, I think it's got machine stitching in it. I think it's the edge of a sheet. I'm just noticing that. That's resisting me a bit, but that's going okay. I don't mind if it's just a little bit and it's just one little area that takes a bit more effort. I wouldn't like it if the whole thing was like that. I think here I'm going to do a cross just on this last area, just because. One big cross. And I think that's it for now. Probably what I'll do is at one point, I don't know when, I will make 3 more the same size. And then when I've made them all and got them to this stage, I'll then see, I think I do want to put more stitching in here. But I'll see until I've done that. So basically for this Wonky Wednesday, the last one, that is me. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed revisiting the log cabin if you did it the first time, and visiting it if you didn't. I'll hold it up so you can see it better. The little brass curtain ring in the middle. Some stitching here that some of it was structural and some of it was just decorative, and yeah, and that joining technique. So there we go. It's been nice knowing you. No, that's mean to say that, because I'm not going. I will be. We'll all still be here. It'll just be slightly different. So anyway, thank you so much, all of you who have watched Wonky Wednesday, whether you've only just started watching or you've watched all of them or you've watched some or whatever. Just thank you so much for all your feedback and everything. It's been wonderful, and so looking forward to next year and the new projects that are coming. Next Wednesday and the Wednesday after will be the 2-parter making the journal for all seasons, if you want to follow along with that with me next year. And then there'll be the slow stitch project starting on the Wednesdays next year. There's the video explaining everything better than I am now. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.